The blood hasn't even dried on the marble floor when you light your cigar. 3 bodies, your cousin, your uncle, your brother-in-law, all slumped in their chairs around the dining table where, moments ago, they made the fatal mistake of questioning your cartel partnership. You don't look at them. You never do. The housekeeper will handle it. She always does. What you look at instead is the contract on the table. 700 million euros annually in exchange for turning your family's legitimate shipping empire into the cartel's untouchable highway. Your signature is already dry. Theirs should have been too. This isn't rage. This isn't even personal. This is what happens when sentiment clouds strategic vision. They wanted to protect the family name, preserve some archaic notion of honor. You wanted to triple revenue and own 3 governments by next quarter. There was never a choice to make. But who are you to wield this kind of absolute power, to decide at breakfast who sees sunset? You were born for it, literally engineered for it. You emerged from old European aristocracy, the kind that doesn't appear in tabloids because it owns the publications. Your family tree doesn't branch, it calculates. Democracy is a fairy tale they tell the middle class. Here, there is only lineage, only succession, only the eldest son. You drew that genetic lottery before you could speak, and from that moment, your childhood ended. What replaced it was a systematic dismantling of weakness, a brutal forging of something harder than human. While other children learned to read, you learned to read balance sheets. While they played, you sat through interrogations disguised as tutoring sessions, pop quizzes on hostile takeovers, bedtime stories about leverage and blackmail. Most children would have shattered. You didn't just endure, you excelled. By age 9, you had surpassed every tutor the family could hire. By 12, you were correcting the strategies of men 4 times your age in closed-door sessions. Your siblings, younger, softer, more human, were still stumbling through basic etiquette while you were already architecting shell corporations in your head. The family elders watched you with something between pride and fear. They called you the Messiah in private, the one who would elevate the empire beyond even their greed-soaked imaginations. You became the embodiment of everything they worshipped: cold precision, ruthless efficiency, zero tolerance for sentiment. But that was the exterior you let them see. The truth was more complicated. You hated them. Every single tradition, every suffocating expectation. The ledgers made you nauseous. Board meetings felt like slow death. What you actually loved, what made your pulse quicken in a way profit margins never could, was cinema. The language of frames and cuts, the architecture of story. You would escape to your private treehouse, a sanctuary they didn't know existed, and consume Kubrick, Kurosawa, Tarkovsky. Your butler would find you there, begging you to return for another economics seminar, while you were lost in the geometry of a single shot from 2001. At 15, you did the unthinkable. You walked into the patriarch's study and told him you were leaving, not asking, telling. The room went silent, and the board members present looked at you like you'd announced your own execution. The patriarch's face remained unreadable, a mask you'd inherited and perfected. They tried the usual tools: duty, legacy, obligation. But you had learned too well from them. You didn't argue. You simply waited, stone-faced, until their words ran out. The patriarch, recognizing his own immovability, reflected back at him, made a calculation. He offered a deal. Pursue your fantasy, but the door stays open until you turn 25. After that, it closes forever. You took it. With family capital, a loan you had no intention of repaying, You built a film studio from nothing. For 2 years, you poured everything into your first feature. It wasn't just good, it was transcendent. The box office returns were double the investment. Critics called you a prodigy. You believed them. That belief killed your next 3 projects. You stopped listening, stopped observing, started thinking you were Cameron when you were barely competent. The money evaporated. The studio collapsed. Banks blacklisted you. At 24, you returned to the mansion you'd sworn to never see again, carrying nothing but humiliation and a resume of catastrophic failure. No one mocked you. That would have been mercy. Instead, they welcomed you back with encouragement so sincere, it felt like violence. The patriarch sat you down and gave you the only advice that ever mattered. Use your talent where it actually applies. Make money first. Buy your dreams later. You thought he was trying to cage you again. He wasn't. He was handing you the key to something bigger than cinema, bigger than art. He was teaching you that power, real, and absolute generational power, doesn't come from creating beautiful things. It comes from controlling the systems that decide what beauty is allowed to exist. So you did what you do best. You learned. You watched. You calculated. Within 2 years, you had restructured the family's entire operation. Within 5, you had tripled territories and diversified into markets so dark they didn't have names. Within 7, you were sitting across from Cartel leadership, negotiating not as a customer, but as an equal. And when they tested you, when they asked what you'd do if your own family opposed the partnership, you didn't hesitate. You told them you'd handle it personally. They didn't believe you. That's why 3 bodies are cooling in your dining room right now. The housekeeper enters silently, begins her work. You stand, adjust your cufflinks, and then walk to the window overlooking the estate. In the distance, shipping containers move through your ports. Inside them, products worth more than small nations, all untouchable, all yours. Your phone vibrates. A message from the cartel's logistics chief. Shipment confirmed. You've earned our trust. You don't reply. Trust is a currency for the weak. What you've earned is something far more valuable. Inevitability. Because this was never about drugs. This was never about money. This is about building a machine so integrated into global infrastructure that governments will protect it just to keep their own systems running. A decade from now, they won't even remember there was a choice. You take one last look at the dining room, at the empty chairs, at the future that almost derailed because 3 men confused legacy with sentiment. Then you walk away. There are 14 more contracts to sign before midnight, and a much larger empire to build.